Okay, hello, I'm Caitlin, and I'm going to be doing a video just kind of explaining how I make the Elden Ring conversions. I had this requested, so we're going to do a kind of unscripted, probably a little bit messy video, just explaining how I do these and my general kind of process. So first off, I've chosen to do the Ancient Hero of Samor for tomorrow. So what's the first thing I do when I pick a boss? Well, first, it needs to be a boss that I've beaten in the game. So I know how it feels when you meet them, their kind of general area, the feeling when you're facing them, usually the feeling of when you get beaten by them, their hardest attacks, that kind of thing. The general feeling of like what is it you experience when you're fighting this boss. So I have to have beaten them already. Then I will search them up on the wiki because it will give me most of the information from like number crunchers and that such to go off of when I'm making the boss. Unfortunately, because it's early on in the game, this isn't always available, but because I'm kind of branching out from the earlier bosses into later ones slowly, hopefully as we get further and further, all of the details will be there and it's easier to build them together. The second thing that I would do is find a guide or a run of someone fighting the boss. So here we have, I believe it's Sweet Johnny Cage, that's their narrated walkthrough, and I'll just kind of slowly watch through and look for how the boss is moving, its fighting style, any big moments that really stand out and feel like they need their own ability or action, or maybe they're just a very reaction focused boss, so I need to give them more reaction abilities, or perhaps they just have a very epic feeling, so they deserve to be a legendary creature, that kind of thing. A big part of doing a conversion into D&D is making it feel true to the Elden Ring version when you convert it to D&D. So, going through, we have a quick read through the wiki, and the first thing, and the easiest thing for us to do, is to look through their absorptions and resistances and see if there's any kind of standout immunities or anything like that they were going to have, and build that into their stats. So we can see, okay, they generally just seem to be vulnerable to stuff. They don't really seem to have any resistances. Their absorptions are fairly normal. I tend to go for a rating of 40 as an absorption for that to be they're resistant to something. Um, and something like a 200 resistance here. If there was 200 resistance for poison, I would put they are um, resistant to poison, or maybe if it's higher, I would just give them immunity to being poisoned as the effect. Um, Hemorrhage and Scarlet Rot are a little bit more difficult because from a D&D perspective, I can't really give the players that, so factoring it into the boss's resistance becomes difficult. So I kind of just ignore those features. Again, for Frostbite, if Frostbite was high, I might give them like some form of cold resistance or something to that effect, but it changes based off the boss. So, next things next. Before we even start, I need to clear out the previous design I've done. So, I am artistically challenged. I honestly cannot draw. I struggle with the formatting and such in terms of designing. So what I do for creating stat blocks is use stat block generators, which just help me make the general D&D style that you see in a lot of the official Wizards of the Coast designs. So, does the traditional font, the layouts, because the background style you expect, it formats everything in the way it should be formatted. And I could do this just with like certain design programs or anything like that, but this is just a quicker version, and I highly guarantee that you use it. The Tetracube stuff is amazing. Definitely support them on Coffee. Everything they've done from their different generators is just mwah. It's great. If you're trying to make homebrew content for your own game, I highly recommend that you try this website. It's very easy to use. So, okay, we should go through. We're gonna go Ancient Hero of Small. Okay, size. Well, they look like a medium to me. I would say they're humanoid. Okay, armor. It looks fairly heavy. I would say we're gonna go with half plate for now. Might change this later. Chaotic evil. Well, they're a hero, so we'll say lawful evil because they're imprisoned for some reason. But they're a hero, so clearly they obeyed the law at some point. And we're going to remove all of the features of the last creature. And I'm just going to go through dealing with all the stuff, removing everything from the last creature, and we'll come back to this later. Okay, so we're back. I've gone through, I've made the stats. They seem like a more dexterous, quick creature after having looked through the video and given myself a refresher course. They, best I could see, feel like a bit of a mage knight. They wield this frost power that they can enchant their sword with, these kind of frost stomps and breath. That seems to be the core theme of the ancient hero. So we're going to try and make abilities based around that. Maybe throw in something to do with their like fallen heroism, but I'm not too sure on what to do with that yet. And obviously wield their weapon around this kind of light greatsword ability. It's definitely going to hit hard, and I think that we're going to have it so they're a heavy armor creature, maybe reduce the health a little bit to compensate for that. Obviously, as we saw in the wiki, they're vulnerable to fire, vulnerable to lightning, easy. Languages. This is kind of because it's a correlation into D&D, a lot of the languages don't really fit. Obviously, there's like Giant and a couple of other things like Sylvan maybe that you could maybe incorporate into like the Elden Ring translation into D&D. Honestly, unless something really stands out, I just go common or understands common, and I'll leave that up to DMs because it's languages is a very like specific thing. Condition immunities. They're immune to friend because of their heroic background. They had poison resistance, but it wasn't very strong, so we're not gonna put that in. Stunned, petrified, paralyzed. No, 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 no. Yeah, no, I think we're good. We're good like that. Um, Speed is fine for now. They're quite a fast character, so we might up the speed, maybe make it 35 or something, so they're very good at tracking you. But for now, we're giving them a challenge rating of 9. It's nothing to write home about, but it's still strong enough. So we'll leave it as is. And we move on to the actual creature. So, multi-attack. We'll change in this soon. But first off, we want to look through the wiki. So, helpfully, the wiki has its attacks listed. So we can already review these and go from there. So, chilling attack. They get on the knees, blow chilling wind, deals damage and frostbite. Okay. So they have like a breath weapon. Spinning attack. Yep, so that's a lot of the mobility. We definitely want to include something that gives off the mobility. At around 50%. So, okay. At bloodied, they enchant their sword. Okay. So that's very easy. We'll do that as a start. So, what could we call a bloodied ability? I was going to cut off there, but actually I think I'm just going to give you my thoughts in general because that's the point of the video. So a bloodied, we want this creature to have a ability where they enchant their sword. So okay, it's an ancient hero. At half HP, something happens. So we'll call it for now Last Stand, and we can come back and maybe give it a different theme later. So Last Stand, the ancient hero of small. Upon reaching bloodied, there we go. Upon reaching bloodied, half HP, always put half HP so that people know what that is, because not everyone does. Upon reaching half HP, the ancient hero of Samor will enchant their blade with, we'll go for 1d8, even though we've not done the greatsword yet. 1d8 for cold damage. Now, do we want the blade to do something else to symbolize frostbite? Because Frostbite does a little bit more in Elden Ring. As it is right now, it's reasonable. It just does additional damage. I think we'll add in their intelligence bonus, which I believe is two. Is it two? Yes, it's two. We could add a counter system like we do with the hemorrhage in some of the previous things, where if you get hit enough, it um, maybe reduces the number of attacks you do, like a stamina drain, or perhaps it gives you disadvantage. So I'm going to think about that. I'm going to think about the counter system, and we'll come back. I'm going to go through a couple of the attacks, add these in, and I'll give you more of my thoughts as I'm further along in the process. So hello, we're back again, and I'm working on the frostbitten counter, so the kind of frostfire, frostbite effect in Elden Ring. As you can see, we've added a couple of things. We've given them a breath weapon, we've made the sword, and there's last stand from before. So we're working on the core counter mechanic of when the ancient hero of Zamor affects them with frost damage, something happens. So we have, much like the blood ability, whenever ancient hero of Zamor hits a creature with cold damage, they gain a counter. Except instead of being removed by healing, I'd made it so that if you're warmed by magical flames, they lose a counter. Something to maybe add some form of roleplay or more effect with fire spells when you go into an encounter. I don't know if that's better than magical healing, but I want to differentiate it from just the blood loss effect. So we're going to go with that. And as always, Greater Restoration will remove all active counters. But we haven't actually said what Frostbitten does yet. So we're working on what could it do. It's a kind of, at least I believe it's stamina drainy in Elden Ring, and it definitely kind of slows you to a degree. So I'm thinking going with slow as the actual effect, and the D&D spell slow. But I obviously want to weaken this so that I'm not just giving a monster a slow spell, because that's kind of harsh. So how best to represent this? I think giving -1 to AC is fine. Yeah, penalties to dexterity, reactions. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, so we'll do it like this. If a creature gains 3 counters of frostbitten, they are they cannot make more than one attack. Was the wording? Yeah, during its turn. During their turn. Are unable to take reactions and have disadvantage on dexterity. Slot that. Dexterity saving throws. I'm having so many issues with my keyboard and mouse lately, so if I'm typing terribly, that's one. Okay, so we've removed the -2 in favour of just giving them the other effects of slow. I do think this is strong, but I think it really helps with the theming. So we're going to try this, yeah. And if it feels too strong, we can always up the challenge rating, put it onto a 10 instead of a 9, and we'll see how it all comes together. But yeah, for now that feels like a good ability. So I'm gonna keep working through this, and we're gonna come back to it, and I'll show you more of how it's progressing then. Okay, so we've made a couple of adjustments since last time. I have upped the AC a little bit because I felt like the AC wasn't quite as strong, so we went for full plate. I've given them a better passive perception. They are skilled in acrobatics because of their movement, and I gave them a reaction ability where whenever they are hit by an attack, they can choose to use the reaction to leap up to 30 feet away, and if they land within 5 feet of a creature, they can make an attack. This all factors into Frostbitten, which is going to be their main mechanic, working with that kind of um, slowing, stamina drainy like effect. But I'm looking at this, and while I really like the interactions with the weapon, I just feel like there isn't quite enough. Now, there are mentions of storm, where they create this like protective veil of ice, and I want to replicate that, and I think that will be another action that we're going to make. So this is generally like towards the last end of me creating a good version. Is at this point the ancient hero, I could just post this. This is like a reasonable level. They're a creature that you could play, but what I want to do is make it so that it really feels like you've got everything from the fight in this creature. At this point, I am risking making it a little bit too packed in, too many features, like kind of feature creep or just too much going on. But if I feel like a boss is cool enough that they should have an effect that they just aren't having, like with Renala, then I'll put in a little bit more. And I get the feeling that this just isn't really quite enough of the frost effects. Like, yeah, okay, you have so this recharging chill wind effect, that's pretty cool, and frostbite is nice, but overall, as it is right now, they just kind of hit you with a sword. And it's a very simple early boss, so that could be fine. But I think we've got two routes that we could take this. So I could give them more reaction abilities, and maybe they can take two reactions per turn to influence their like speed and jumping around, or give them an ice storm effect. And what you have to think about when creating these conversions is what feels better to play against. Because I think that giving them more stuff that they do on the enemy player's turns might make for a better visual of this is the boss jumping around, doing this, doing that. But I don't think it's fun to play against. And one of the issues that I've found is when you're playing against monsters that do a ton of stuff on your turn, sure, it makes them harder, but it really makes combat awkward. It really interrupts the flow of stuff. So I'm going to stop the recording here. We'll come back. I'm going to try making the Ice Storm ability, and we'll see how that feels in the overall like finished picture. So, okay, now I've finished with the abilities, and we made the Permafrost Veil. Ancient Hero of Zamor conjures up a veil of ice. Whilst the veil is up, the first attack an enemy creature makes against her each turn has disadvantage. In addition, for 1 minute, all creatures within 10 foot of the Ancient Hero of Zamor must make a DC 14 Constitution saving throw. On a failure, they gave one for them. This will be for the next phase, correcting kind of like issues like that, but as you can see, they get gold damage and they get another counter, which feeds into the overall effect of Frostbitten. So our core ability is this Frostbite mechanic. We've now got it working with Bloodied, her sword, and with these frost abilities that they've given them. So the DM has a fair amount of stuff that they can do, making this boss kind of jump around and do various things. I feel that we're pretty good on the armor class and hit points. I think the speed is fair. They're a little bit faster to represent their motions. I did make them a little bit more intelligence because it feels, at least how we're doing them, they're a very like spell mage knight character, so that can work into that. But otherwise, I think we're good. I don't think we need anything further done to this. So all that comes last is a read through where we check the formatting, check that everything lines up with our stats, and obviously correct any spelling or grammatical errors that we've made and try and make it just as neat as possible before I go ahead and add my Twitter and Patreon so that you know where to find me. So really, that's all. This is a relatively simple conversion, so not a lot to talk about too much, just how I make each of the abilities. But that's how I do it. It's just a case of I review how other people have fought these creatures, I fight them myself, and yeah, I look up every wiki ability that I can and really try to nail down what it is that makes this creature work, makes it tick in Elden Ring, and makes it tick in D&D. Because I want, most of all, for these bosses that you fight to feel authentic and actually feel like, you're fighting Renala or Godric or the ancient hero. I want that to come out in D&D. But yeah, that's all. Thanks for watching. I know this video might have been a bit of a mess because it's just completely unscripted and I'm not the best at talking, but I hope you enjoyed it and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.